The perimeter of the rectangle is 80 centimeters. The area of the rectangle is a centimeters. Show that x squared minus 40x plus a equals 0. What we have to do is use the piece of information the question gave us and come up with an expression that finally simplifies to x squared minus 40x plus a equals 0. So the first piece of information is the fact that the perimeter of the rectangle is 80 centimeters. This means that the length around the shape is equal to 80. This side is also equal to x, but we don't know the width of the rectangle. If you don't know the values to something, you can always pretend that it's a letter for now. So for now, let's assume that the width of the rectangle is equal to y. So this side is y, this side is also equal to y. So using the first piece of information, we can write x plus y, which is the expression for the perimeter, should equal 80. And this simplifies to 2x plus 2y equals 80. The second piece of information the question gives us is the fact that the area of the rectangle is a centimeters squared. The area of a rectangle can be found by base times height, or in this case, x multiplied by y. So from the second piece of information, we can write x multiplied by y, which is xy, should equal a. If you look at the expression that we finally want to simplify it into, it doesn't have a y term, it only has x and a. That's partly because we just came up with the y. This means that we want to use the equations that we came up with, which is this one and this one, and combine it to get rid of the y. So we can get rid of the y by substituting in the y from both equations, as in we can rearrange this equation into y equals a divided by x if we divide both sides by x. So once we've rearranged this into y equals a over x, I can use this value of y to substitute it into this y, and therefore we get rid of the y. So if we do that, that's 2x plus 2y, but we know that y is equal to a over x equals 80. And all we need to do now is simplify it to make it look like this. So the expression that we want doesn't have a fraction, so we can get rid of the denominator by multiplying by the denominator. So we're going to multiply both sides by x. This becomes 2x squared plus 2a equals 80x. The coefficient of x squared in the term or the expression that we want is 1. So let's get rid of this 2. And we can get rid of this 2 by dividing by 2, because right now it's 2 multiplied by x squared. So we can divide this side by 2 and divide this side by 2. And we get x squared plus a equals 80x divided by 2, which is 40x. And then we can remove the 40x from the right hand side and move it to the left hand side by doing minus 40x to both sides. And once we do this, on the left hand side we have x squared minus 40x plus a equals 40x minus 40x, which is equal to 0, and therefore we have the expression that we want right here. When a equals 300, solve the equation x squared minus 40x plus a equals 0 by factorizing. This means we can solve this quadratic by writing it into two brackets. So if we replace the a with 300, the expression becomes x squared minus 40x plus 300 equals 0. The factors of 300 are 3 and 100, 5 and 60, 30 and 10, for example. And as you can see, 30 and 10 should work because 30 plus 10 equals 40. Therefore, we can write this expression into two brackets. One of them should have 10, one of them should have 30. They add up to minus 40, so they both needs to be a minus. And of course, minus 30 multiplied by minus 10 equals positive 300. So therefore it works. So we should have x here and x here equals 0. We can always check whether we correctly factorize the expression or not by expanding the brackets. If I expand the brackets, I have x squared minus 10x minus 30x plus 300 equals 0, which is the same as the first expression we started with. Therefore, the factorization is correct. And from this factorization, you should be able to get the answers right away by switching the signs inside the bracket. So this means that one of the answers is minus 30 turn into positive 30, so that's 30, and minus 10 turn into positive 10, so that's 10. If you want to understand why this is, think about the term maybe b multiplied by c equals 0. If b is equal to 0, no matter what value c is, 0 multiplied by c is still equal to 0. Or if c equals 0, no matter what value b is, b multiplied by 0 is still equal to 0. If you look back at our expression, we have this bracket, which is x minus 30, multiplied by this bracket, which is x minus 10, equals 0. When we solve for it, we want an x value substituted into this expression, and they should multiply to equal 0. And it will always equal 0 when one of the brackets is equal to 0. If the first bracket is equal to 0, it doesn't matter what the second bracket is equal to, because anything multiplied by 0 is still equal to 0. This means that it will work when x minus 30 equals 0, and when you solve this expression, we get x equals 30. In the second scenario, the second bracket can be equal to 0, and we don't care what the first bracket is because anything multiplied by 0 is still equal to 0. So it will work when x minus 10 equals 0, and when we solve this, we get x equals 10. And that is why our answer is just the sign switch of whatever is inside the bracket. X equals 30 and x equals 10. When a equals 200, solve the equation x squared minus 40x plus a equals 0 using the quadratic formula. Show all your working and give your answers correct to 2 decimal places. You should be able to memorize the quadratic formula as minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. In this case, we have x squared minus 40x plus a, which in this case is 200, equals 0. So the value of a in this case is the number in front of the x squared, so a equals 1. B is the number in front of the x, so in this case b equals minus 40. And c is just the number without any x term, in this case is 200. And all we need to do is substitute it into this expression. So in this case, our answer should be minus 40 plus and minus the square root of minus 40 squared minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 1, multiplied by c, which is 200, and all divided by 2a, or all divided by 2 multiplied by 1. This is equal to 40 plus and minus the square root of 800 divided by 2. Our first answer is x equals 40 plus square root of 800 divided by 2. Our second answer is x equals to 40 minus 800 divided by 2. And you can use a calculator for this step. Our first answer from the calculator after you press the S to D button is 34.1421. We need to round it to 2 decimal places. That means our first answer is 34.14. Our second answer from the calculator is 5.85786. Rounded to 2 decimal places, our answer would be 5.86. B. A car completes a 200-kilometer journey at an average speed of x kilometers per hour. The car completes the return journey of 200 kilometers per hour at an average speed of x plus 10 kilometers per hour. Show that the difference between the time taken for each of the 2 journeys is 2000 divided by x multiplied by x plus 10 hours. So according to our speed equations, time is equal to distance divided by speed. This means that the time for the first journey should be equal to 200 kilometers divided by the speed, which is x kilometers per hour for the first journey. For the second journey, the distance is still the same, so the distance is still 200 kilometers, but the speed is x plus 10 kilometers per hour for the first journey and for the second journey. So the difference in time taken would be the subtraction of the 2 times. So the difference should be 200 over x for the first time minus 200 over x plus 10 for the second time. The aim of the question is to show that this expression is equal to this expression, which is 1 fraction. So what we should be doing is combining these two over here into 1 fraction. Before we can add and subtract fractions, we need to make the denominator the same first. We don't know what the lowest common multiple of x and x plus 10 is because we don't know the value of x yet. So the lowest common multiple we can always use is the product of the 2 denominators. So that's x multiplied by x plus 10. So I need to multiply the second fraction by x over x, and I need to multiply the first fraction by x plus 10 over x plus 10. We can do this because multiplying by x over x is the same as multiplying by 1, and multiplying by x plus 10 over x plus 10 is also the same as multiplying by 1. And when we do this, we get 200 multiplied by x plus 10 over x multiplied by x plus 10 minus 200x over x times x plus 10. And now that the denominator is the same, we can just directly subtract the top of the fraction. So that is 200 multiplied by x plus 10 minus 200x over x times x plus 10. And the top can be turned into 200x plus 2000 after we expand the bracket here, minus 200x over x times x plus 10. And the 200x over here minuses the 200x over here is just 0. So we are left with 2000 on the top over x and x plus 10, which is the same as the expression that we wanted. 2. Find the difference between the time taken for each of the two journeys when x equals 80. Give your answers in minutes and seconds. From part 1, we know that the expression for the time difference is 2000 divided by x multiplied by x plus 10. If we look back at the first part of the question, x is given in kilometers per hour. This one is also given in kilometers per hour. Therefore, the unit of our answer when we calculate this should be in hours. So to find the value, we first substitute x equals 80. So this equals 2000 divided by 80 multiplied by 80 plus 10, which is equal to 2000 divided by 7200, which equals 5 over 18 hours. And we know that there are 60 minutes per hour. So to convert hours into minutes, we can just multiply by 60. 5 over 18 multiplied by 60 is equal to 50 over 3 minutes. If I change 50 over 3 into a proper fraction, it's 16 and 2/3 minutes. This means we have 16 minutes already. So we have 16 here, and we have 2/3 of a minute that we need to convert into seconds. And we know that there are 60 seconds for every minute. So we can convert minutes into seconds by multiplying by 60. This means we have 2 over 3 multiplied by 60 seconds, and 2 over 3 multiplied by 60 is equal to 40 seconds. Therefore, our answer is 16 minutes and 40 seconds.